Hindustan Aeronautics Limited is out of the AMCA race.
A conglomeration of 5th and 6th gen capabilities. Not easy, it's extremely difficult.
Yes, sir.
But we have to get there, and HAL is obviously incapable of it, and I'm glad the government has recognized this. Indian Air Force has been the most, supportive of the Indian aviation industry. We have paid for in blood in the price of pilots on poor quality control in the past. I have ejected from a fighter aircraft. After its wonderful beginning in the early 70s, 60s and 70s, when it came out with the HF-24 and platforms like that, it has somehow lost its way. And over the last 2 to 3 decades, the Indian Air Force has borne the brunt of its shortcomings. Air Force communities world over have been alive to it the longest. Okay, and how far will a manned pilot go? Then came the issue of drones. Drones have been there since World War II.
Sure.
Indian Air Force had killer drones, loiter munitions and drones for a decade plus, almost 2 decades, a decade and a half. If we had gone and taken the decisions which we took then and seen it through, and all those 126 aircraft had come in, Indian aviation industry, fighter aviation industry would have been in a different place today. But we didn't do that. We lost 10 years. At 10 years is a lot of time, Gaurav. That there have been production delays, bunching off of production to the year end so that the workers get their bonus. You know, you work overtime in the end and you get the overtime.
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat this? You're saying that
there used to be regular chairman, HL used to be from the Indian Air Force. I'm not saying that's a place to be tenanted by Indian Air Force. Most certainly, I mean, it's an open doubt. But now there is a deliberate effort for so many years to keep the Air Force out.
Jai Hind, friends, I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching Open Collar. Hindustan Aeronautics Limited is out of the AMCA race. India is manufacturing a 5th generation fighter jet. The project was supposed to go to hell. And now suddenly it's not. There are also other issues with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. And to discuss that, today I have with me a very special guest, Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury. Jai Hind, sir, a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Gaurav. Pleasure to be on this same forum with you.
So my first question to you is, I see a sense of relief in a lot of people on social media, some of them veterans, saying that, okay, HAL is out of the AMCA race. Possibly now it'll get done. There is this feeling that Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has not been able to deliver what it was meant to deliver. The Chief of Air Staff has also, on many occasions, expressed his dissatisfaction, if I may use that word, with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Sir, I'd like your response to this question.
Gaurav, this is actually a bittersweet moment. Bitter from the point of view that an institution which was created by the nation in its infancy to look after all its aeronautical engineering products has reached this point. Sweet, because after years and years and years of struggling, it has now opened out. I think the government is entirely seized of the matter of the challenges which the HAL has faced, its long due promises, long production promises, failure to meet the production timelines. Look at the amount of product, orders which is booked in the HAL's name, which is in lakhs.
I'm going to ask you about that, sir.
Okay.
And that is my question number 2. But you're saying bittersweet, sir.
So bittersweet because, like I said, it was something, it doesn't give us great pleasure to see HAL in the position it is in. It shouldn't have been here. But it has come here because of its own doing.
Sure.
And a lot of institutional issues in it. So sweet from the point of view, it's high time, I think, that it's remained the sole player in the Indian aviation industry and Indian aviation production, and especially when it comes to fighter aircraft, because after its wonderful beginning in the early 70s, 60s and 70s, when it came out with the HF-24 and platforms like that, it has somehow lost its way. And over the last 2 to 3 decades, the Indian Air Force has borne the brunt of its shortcomings. And this is not just an Air Force losing out. Please understand, this is national security implications. you have ended up compromising India's air power, which is one of the three instruments of military power, which is a nation's security and deterrence service. So, if HAL has failed, it is not that its customer has failed, and that is how unfortunate it has been looked at. Oh, it's Air Force's problem. My God, it's been the national problem. And I'm glad today, I think that realization has come in that this is a national security issue and it has been addressed as so. And that is why the AMCA has gone to somebody else, because we cannot afford to delay on this. We have lost more than a decade plus in this entire, in fact, 2 decades actually, if you look at it, from the old MMRCA and the MFRA projects. We have lost out the timelines. If we had gone and taken the decisions which we took then and seen it through, and all those 126 aircraft had come in, Indian aviation industry, fighter aviation industry would have been in a different place today. But we didn't do that. We lost 10 years. At 10 years is a lot of time, Gaurav, in this dog-eat-dog world of competition. So remember this, that when we start now, we are starting from scratch, actually. So we are in a situation where we need to jumpstart technologies. We are struggling with our 5th generation AMCA, whereas China has already flown a 6th generation platform. US is coming out with it rapidly, very soon. If you look at it in Tibet, the 5th generation has already been flying there. The Chinese 5th generation platform. Pakistan,
A20, sir?
Yeah, Pakistan will get the 5th generation, the J-35 before we get our AMCA online. So effectively, you will have not only a 5th generation already flying, you will probably have 6th generation flying in Tibet actively by the time our AMCA comes out. So our AMCA has to jump technologies possibly. It's not easy. Maybe we have to look at the AMCA not from a limited frame of a 5th gen platform, but maybe a 5.5 to nearing a conglomeration of 5th and 6th gen capabilities. Not easy. It's extremely difficult.
Yes, sir.
But we have to get there. And HAL is obviously incapable of it. And I'm glad the government has recognized this.
So, you said institutional problems in the HAL. What are those institutional problems, sir?
So this is something, Gaurav, I think I've written about it in your
Sir.
your Chanakya Digest as well.
Sir.
It has remained a PSU. It has a public sector undertaking. It has remained with that mindset. It has, there is organizational sloth here. There are pockets of excellence. But at the end of the day, you look at it, and I've said this earlier as well, that there have been production delays, bunching of production to the year end so that the workers get their bonus. You know, you work overtime in the end and you get the overtime.
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat this? You're saying that...
Yeah, I've said this earlier as well, and I'm saying it again on your show. For years, Indian Air Force, you know, when you order platforms or they're supposed to come out in a certain production rate, they are spread out over the year so that you have certain number of platforms always available on the flight line. Now, these are staggered. They're supposed to come in every 3 months, you know, aircraft going for major repairs or new aircraft, which are, newer production aircraft which are coming out. They're supposed to come out spaced out over the entire financial year so that the Indian Air Force has enough aircraft to fly. But these production delays have always slipped. The HAL used to go to government, get the clearances, and these used to slip till the last quarter. When last quarter, suddenly there used to be a rush of production. I mean, you ask any Indian Air Force pilot, we always used to end up going to HAL in the year end to collect the aircraft because they are suddenly now being produced in large numbers and they wanted to get them off their hands at that point in time.
Because of the bonus.
Overtime.
Overtime.
And this is nothing new. This has been carrying on for years. I'm sorry. There are times when have not met the annual target and it has been slipped over into the next year. And Air Force had very little it could do about it because there was no Air Force representation in the leadership in the organization at all. Till 70s or I think mid or early 80s, I think Chief Marshal Katre or Air Marshal Katre, he was the last chairman HAL. They used to be regular chairman HAL used to be from the Indian Air Force. I'm not saying that's a place to be tenanted by Indian Air Force. Most certainly, I mean, it's an open doubt. But now there is a deliberate effort for so many years to keep the Air Force out. The only representation Indian Air Force had was in the DCS. He was part of the board. Now, he's been taken off from the board, I think 2016. He was removed from the board saying that this is a you can't have the a serving air marshal on the board because it's conflict of interest, because we are the customer ourselves. Aren't DRDO members on board? So there is, you look at the Indian Navy. Why is the Navy shipyard today a success story? Because there was a huge integration and hand-holding with the Indian Navy did with the civil dockyards, okay, in terms of leadership and positioning across the levels. So over the years, there's a clear interface and interconnect between the user and the producer. In in HAL's case, that was not the case. You have shut out, you have not bothered about Indian Air Force's requirements. We wanted to get this, if we had got the Rafale at that point in time, when it was first contracted, first deal was being done. Look at where the Indian industry would have been today. So HAL actively pursued the Russian FGFA, which fell through. It had put its weight behind the FGFA. There are Russian HAL experts sitting in Russia for I think couple of years. But that thing got called off and the Rafale deal fell through. Why did it fall through? I think Nirmala Sitharaman, as the defense minister, she had come on public domain and said that it is because the Rafale company, it was not acceptable to have HAL on board because they were not sure of the product output and quality assurance. So this is there on record. So this is where we are today. So what has it done? Everyone blames the Air Force. Oh, Air Force. Yes, most certainly. We have changed our requirements over time because a fighter platform, you conceive it in a certain year and you don't deliver it in 30 years, which is what the Tejas story is. Sure. Of course, requirements of the platform will change along the way because you can't meet the production deadlines. So what has happened? At the end of the day, Air Force has been made to blame everywhere. Oh, Air Force kept changing its requirements. For heaven's sake, meet your targets. Military requirements are not in stasis. They are dynamic. They change with the evolution of technology and the warfighting requirements as it evolves. Look at the warfighting requirements today.
And threat perception, sir?
Absolutely. And our threat perception has grown. You have two neighbors who are strategic partners who are nuclear powers.
Collusivity, sir?
Absolutely. No nation in the world has the threat perception that India has. Sure. So shouldn't have India's fighter production or air power capability be an issue of national security and national priority and interest?
Absolutely, sir.
Why hasn't HAL looked at it that way? So I am not here to browbeat HAL. I am just saying what has happened to an organization which did a fantastic job in its initial formative years. Where have they lost their way?
Sir, I just want to ask you a question here because I've spoken to certain senior naval officers and they said that I asked them, the Indian Navy is able to put a ship every 40 days. That is what Admiral Dinesh Tripathi, Chief of Naval Staff, said. And it's actually happening. We see it happening. Every 40 days, there is a new craft. So this is about 9.5 warships every year or so like that. And they're able to do it. And when I asked them, they said there are serving Navy personnel in every shipyard that manufactures ship for the Navy. They're pretty much controlled production. The Army is doing it, sir. The AK-203, the head of that factory that produces AK-203 is a serving Major General from the Army. He's serving, sir. So there is no conflict of interest with the Navy or the Army. Why is there the supposed conflict of interest with the Air Force? Why can't a 3-star be the head of HAL and end the story, sir?
I think the HAL is the best person to answer this. This is something which the Indian Air Force has been talking about the longest time. We have at present a 2-star with 15-odd officers who look into, who sort of oversee ADA's design and development and HAL's production capability. But they are there only to monitor the production. They are not involved in the production.
So,
you look at it today, I think it's been put out that in there, I think HAL has put it out that I think 5 Tejas Mark 1As are ready with major requirements being met. What is major requirement? Why isn't the aircraft ready in its full form? Because there are integration challenges, which the Indian Air Force has no handle on. Of course, Indian Air Force will not accept it in the present form. They are trying very hard to push those 5. Please take these. The rest we will follow. The same story as the back of the past.
And then the villain is the Indian Air Force.
Again, every time.
Yes, sir. But these people are not accepting and they want foreign fighters.
So that is exactly what it is. So there's a whole narrative which has been created. For heaven's sake, Indian Air Force has been the most, what should I say, supportive of the Indian aviation industry. We have paid for in blood in the price of pilots on poor quality control in the past. I have ejected from a fighter aircraft. The erstwhile chief, Air Chief Marshal Dhanwa has come on and said what the HTT 32 did. We lost some 18 odd pilots in crashes. Who's going to be accountable for it?
And how much more support do they want, sir?
We have given them first 87 and then 90. I think the whole total order. Look at it. They have got orders on a platform which has not yet shown its come on the flight line, for heaven's sake. How much more support do you want? Look at HAL's pending orders on trainer aircraft, on helicopters. It has got, I think, I forget how much is the figure. I think 2.7 lakh crores, if I'm not wrong.
180 Tejas Mark 1 only.
Only. I'm just saying, look at the other orders which are pending.
Helicopters and other platforms, sir.
Where are they? Trainer aircraft, where are they? So I'm just amazed at the ability of this organization to consistently blame the Air Force for it. Yes, we have had our challenges. I'm not denying it. Air Force has also had its challenges when it deals with an industry. It's not easy.
Sure.
Okay, and our design requirements, for heaven's sake, will change because of warfighting changes in warfighting requirements.
Sure.
We cannot, yes, we may have at a point, once upon a time, we wanted the best available of technology.
Yes, sir.
We came to terms with the fact that this is not always possible. There are people who have written, the whole narrative has stated, oh, the Indian Air Force likes to go abroad, spend time abroad and buy foreign fighters. Really? Really? I'm surprised that this is, and we will put ourselves in a weak spot for this. Let me tell you, this 114 is just one aspect of it, which the deal which has just been apparently been signed.
So the Rafale, sir.
The Rafale deal.
Sir.
There is this whole another chunk of 180 fighters which is supposed to come out of Mark 1As only. Then there is Tejas Mark 2 and the AMCA. And we have the Jaguars and the MiG-29s which will be going out soon. So will the Mirages.
I think 6 squadrons of Jaguars, sir, in the next 5 years or so, sir.
So where are we? We are barely struggling to keep the numbers alive, let alone start getting back towards the 42 Squadron Air Force. Who's to blame for it? Indian Air Force? On its own entirely? Do we have a death wish that we want to put the national security at risk and say, no, let the numbers keep reducing. We just want to go abroad and buy fighters. I think that's very disingenuous and unfair.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say that, sir, various chiefs of Air Force, sir, even the incumbent, in the end, sir, I feel very sad when I hear the Chief of Air Staff say, and what is he supposed to say otherwise? Say that we'll fight with what we have. I think we've let down the Air Force majorly, sir. In the end, a soldier will fight or anyone will fight with what they have. But we could have certainly done better. Now, my question to you, sir, is, sir, do you think there is a case for total privatization of HAL? Give it to, with the order book, 2.7 lakh crore plus, multiple platforms, get a private body, get a XYZ, I'm not taking names here, but we have so many companies with that kind of industrial depth, and shift it to a private company and say, hey, listen, you make it. Do you think it will become more efficient if a private player is doing it, sir?
See, increase in privatization is an absolute bonus here. It's a win-win situation. Total privatization, though attractive it may sound, is very simplistic. I don't think that is the way forward, because the sheer size and scale of what HAL is, I don't think there is any private company which can take it on in one go, because look at the amount of different products, different HAL industries set up over the country, which can be privatized in one go. What it probably needs, because see, at the end of the day, what does the HAL really do? Put together stuff. It buys everything and puts together stuff. Okay. There is very little design and development element in it. For the Tejas, it is the ADA which has done the design. So understand this. So this is a challenge. Okay, privatization most certainly will improve production, bring in more efficiency. It will, probably bring down production costs. There'll be faster prototyping. Uh, I think there'll be tighter supply chain management
Yes, sir.
over it. Okay. HAL has got so many products online, it is unable to manage its own supply chains. So I think a mix of privatization and governmental oversight with more governmental engagement, maybe more engagement from the Air Force, okay, is the need of the hour of the day. We cannot let an HAL, an industry the size of HAL, after all, it's a national Maharatna. We can't let it sink. Yes, it needs right sizing, it needs right shaping, and it needs to right itself in its, commitment to national security as a larger interest rather than just a company or a manufacturer working for profits and being marketed on the and seeing its stock on the markets every day.
Yes, sir.
That shouldn't be the focus.
Absolutely, sir. So I'll draw your attention to research and development, which is very, very important, especially in the field of weapons manufacturing, sir. Your blunt take on where are we as a nation in terms of research and development of weapon platforms? It can be any weapon platform, sir, not necessarily Tejas. And do you think even the private players, apart from HAL is one, sir, HAL, but apart from that, even private players need to put in more money into research and development. Otherwise, we'll be forever trying to figure out which technology to buy from where. Do you think we need to be a research and development powerhouse also?
Most certainly, Gaurav. This is something which, unfortunately, in the past, and I grant this HAL this, that it went through its own challenges. When we produced a fantastic aircraft, the HF-24, we were struggling with the engine. We were using a NAT engine, which could not, there was no afterburner in the engine. And the Indian Air Force had requirement for a Mark II fighter. And the HF-24 went into Mark I with great difficulty, with one engine. So the problem was, at that point in time, in the 70s, we did a nuclear test, we came in for sanctions. So access to high-tech research, knowledge base, which was available in the international market, wasn't available to us. We were denied it. We couldn't have access to it. We tried very hard with the Kaveri engine, but there were limits. We got specialists from outside to oversee these projects. I mean, for the Kaveri engine testing, I don't know if you're aware, they had to do this testing in Russia on an IL-76 platform. 72 scientists went for these testing, out of which 34 scientists were scientist G. Where is the engine today? So the point is, there are huge issues because it's not something you can do overnight. It needs decades. Most countries, I think there are five countries, if I'm not wrong, which produces engines. USA, UK, France, Russia.
Sure.
And China has just come into the game now.
Yes.
Okay. It takes decades, 30, 40 years to develop engine, metallurgy of that level. We are nowhere near that. So what have we done for the GTRE, for the Kaveri engine? We got experts. We hired experts temporarily from abroad. There's no commitment. And those are on contractual basis. There's a limited skill pool of talent available in the world. So if you get them on contract for short term, how will you have a long developed industry which develops an engine? And we're just talking about a fighter engine, which, see, the fighter aircraft has probably the most complex elements of technology in it, which needs enormous wide range of research because there are the platform itself and the weapons as well. Things like a seeker head of a missile, it needs a research and development. Aircraft skin, the composites to make it stealth is an entirely different science by itself. A simple nose cone of the fighter, which is the radome, which houses the radar, is created in an entirely different manufacturing process. So these are all not available with us. We have to invest in money, in research and development, which should have done that. We did not do that. We need to pour in a lot more money, but we have to start somewhere. So I think this opening up into the privatized, opening out to the private sector will encourage more research and development. How and why would private sector put in huge amount of money if it's not assured of returns or its product being sold or orders being given? So along with this whole issue of a certain amount of privatization, like I said, it will open up a whole lot more things. There are two more areas which you really need to look at. So, one is integration of, projects. That's where another challenge which is facing. But most critical aspect comes to certification, which the RCMA and the CEMILAC does it. CEMILAC is a single body which is doing it. Okay, that comes under the MOD. And now it has become an institution which I think, yes, I'm not saying it's not, it's a defunct organization. Most certainly not. It's doing its job. But I fear it's become a bureaucratic organization in itself, which approaches audit. You have reams and reams of reports and certification issues, and they're going with a logic that if we make it difficult means we are doing a good job. No, sir. No, sir. You have to, certification is, at the end of the day, who's certifying a platform which is being flown by others? A body which has got no aviation connect at all with it. So there are these issues. See, if you look at it at the end of the day, we are talking about HAL's involvement. Who does the test flying? The Indian Air Force does it. So isn't there a dichotomy here? So these are the issues we need to look at holistically. So privatization, most certainly holistic overall privatization, I won't agree. I won't suggest we go that way.
Sure.
But most certainly we have made a start. HAL needs much more oversight, governmental oversight, and with user involvement, active user involvement, which in this case is Indian Air Force is the largest customer.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Now, sir, I'm going to ask you about the loyal wingman concept. When you talk about 6th generation fighters, you're also saying that you have maybe one fighter aircraft and it has the ability to control drones. I'm using this word loosely, sir, drones. They're actually fighter aircraft, but pilotless. Do you think in a couple of decades, you will see a scenario where the pilot is not where he or she was? So in the sense of this entire piece of flying an aircraft, flying a fighter aircraft, you see, sir, because what I'm saying is that you're talking about, they tested an F-16, sir, in the US, and they managed to fly it very well without a pilot. Now today, you have AI flying planes and all of that. Now I'm not saying it has been battle tested, but it may be battle tested in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So couple of decades down the line, do you see a part of the Air Force, in major air forces in the world, where the pilot is not in every single aircraft? Let me put it that way, sir.
Gaurav, this is nothing new. It has come as a news to most of the Indian audiences. So let me tell you, the Indian Air Force has been alive to it the longest. Air Force communities world over have been alive to it the longest. Okay, and how far will a manned pilot go? Then came the issue of drones. Drones have been there since World War II.
Sure.
Indian Air Force had killer drones, loiter munitions and drones for a decade plus, almost 2 decades, a decade and a half. Okay. This is not probably well known, though if you Google it, it was all available,
Sure.
This information. But the point is, drones have come into the limelight in the Russo-Ukraine war. And the use of drones by non-state players. Nagorno-Karabakh, where the Hamas, the Hezbollah, Houthis, the way they have used unmanned systems. Okay. But unmanned systems are not by itself the solution. Okay, there's a whole range, like you mentioned. You use the word drones loosely. Yes, the drones from a low-end, small, micro drone which you can use probably the size of a thumbnail,
Sure,
to one which goes into probably larger than a fighter
sure,
air platform. In fact, some of the larger drones are huge. UCAVs are huge, but they have a separate role and place in this whole business of warfighting, aerial warfighting. Now, there is a lot of talk, and there is obviously a realization and understanding in all air forces, all leading air forces, that your force structuring in the future cannot only be by manned platforms. Because manned platforms have limits in terms of risk aspects, wherein if you send in manned platforms to depth targeting, which is the Air Force's primary role of the Indian Air Force, strategic depth targeting is Indian Air Force's major role.
Sure.
So if you are going to risk all your platforms, manned platforms, it's a high risk mission today. Okay. If you have the option of expanding this and using them wherever required, most certainly. And that is why Indian Air Force has also gone into what it calls the MUMT, manned unmanned teaming, like most of the leading air forces in the world, where a manned platform take charges or flies with several other unmanned platforms who do these deep missions. But drones have a separate place in the Air Force's concept of warfighting. It has a different place in the Army's concept of warfighting. And the clash is today because the Indian Army is huge today, and the way it's gone from drones, it has made this drone thing a huge, larger than life threat. If you really look at it, what is the real challenge? The challenge today is the Indian Army is facing is that they don't want to be, or they're afraid that they will be in a situation like in Ukraine, where a soldier remains only in the trench. Because if he comes out, he becomes a drone target. That is why the Indian Army is looking at drones in such a big way, especially because China is another country which has invested hugely in drones. So the Indian Army or a army's approach to drones is different from that of Air Force.
Sure.
Air Force threats of drone are what? To its bases and in future unmanned systems targeting your manned platforms or unmanned platforms or weapons. So the scale of the two are entirely different.
Like a loyal wingman concept, sir.
Yes, so loyal wingman most certainly will come. Air power has widened. Air power was earlier seen only in terms of manned fighters and bombers. No more anymore. Today, air forces of the future will have manned platforms, unmanned platforms, drones, missiles, the entire range of weapons and systems which uses the aerial medium. That is what air power is going to be in the future. In fact, aerospace power, because you have to integrate the space element into it.
That was my next question, sir.
Let's lead on.
About like for example, the French Air Force, sir. It is the French Air and Space Force. And a lot of the US has a space command, sir. So that's a separate thing altogether. The Russians are at it, the Chinese are at it. Where do you see the Indian Air Force in terms of Air and Space Force as compared to the French Air and Space Force, sir?
Okay. So I'll put some things out of the way here in the beginning, is that, there was initially a lot of talk itself that, when Air Force said that it is an aerospace power, there was a little concern at some point as to how is, it's like Indian Air Force is seeking ownership of space. Typically, that is how it was looked at. So no, sir. Indian Air Force uses space and space support systems in an enormous way, from navigation, targeting, weather,
sure.
C2 systems, networking. It is all on space-based or space-aligned systems. ISR is entirely, not entirely, to a great extent relies on that. So the Air Force's usage of space has been enormous from the longest period of time. But so has the Army and the Navy have their own requirements of space. But aerospace power means that you own that we cannot no longer look at only the vertical airspace, which conventionally till now in the world over, in the absence of any laid down limit, there is only one limit which defines the space and air and space. That is the Kármán line at 100, which is average is about at 100 kilometers at space. Above that is near space, and beyond that, much higher altitudes is outer space. We used to look at up to 60,000 kilometers or so. We had the MiG-25,
sure.
Which was a recce platform, which used to fly at 1 lakh feet.
Sure.
Okay, which almost, look at the altitude it used to fly at, not 36, 40, 60,000 feet, 1 lakh feet.
Sure.
Okay. We have today platforms, weapons which transit through this part of the space, the near space.
Sure.
You have weapons, air-launched and space-based weapons which will transit through the space. But we have surveillance or awareness only up to 40, 50, 60,000 feet. We need to expand it. So what I have been writing about for the last, 5, 6 years, that there is a need of shifting our air domain awareness to aerospace domain awareness. That means you need visibility of the aerospace domain, at least up to near space, because it will give you more reaction time in your weapon system and your defense organizations.
Yes.
Okay. So, air defense has to transit into aerospace defense.
Yeah.
It can no longer be air defense because you've got ballistic missiles, you've got high altitude, platforms which are coming through, transiting through near space, as we mentioned. We got, you have space-based weapons which will use that domain.
Or anything that does re-entry, sir.
Does re-entry, absolutely.
Sir.
Okay, it could be space launch, it could be surface launch.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So unless you have domain awareness of this, unless you have control of this domain, now it's not just about control of the air, you're talking about aerospace control and aerospace defense. So these three are integrated. That's the future. That is what we need to do. Okay, we can no longer look at it from an air perspective. So when we talk about space and we look at the French Air Force being a small country, it has been the lead service. It looks after ISR, it looks after space weapons and space projection systems. India is too big a country, and Indian Peace Space Organization has been well established. Now there's an understanding, there's a need for greater military involvement in the space segment. So we need larger organizational restructuring. We have the Defense Space Agency, which is a start, but it has to graduate into probably an aerospace command very quickly, because unless we start thinking in that direction and again get into R&D investment, creating a new architecture for the entire thing, we will be falling behind. So most certainly that we need to get into space or into the aerospace domain. Indian Air Force is called the Air and Space Force for a very good reason. We need to smell the coffee in what's happening around the world. Okay.
Absolutely, sir.
And we need to stop making it an issue of service-based issue. There are certain core competencies which every service has. Air and the vertical domain has been the Air Force's core competency. So while we're not talking about sole ownership, but it must be the lead service in any case. So that is what I think we need to do. I think we will find our own way forward, which are typical to suit India's needs, and like you mentioned at the beginning very aptly, to meet our threat perception and requirements in the future.
So, thank you very much for speaking to us today, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, with Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury, we spoke about a lot of things. Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, their order book. We spoke about threats, about the Air and Space Force, etc. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll be back again very shortly with another special guest. Till then, Jai Hind.